Welcome back to Kcc Dst Online. My name is Jeff Rush, and this is Chapter 10, Part 2. We had a short interruption there, sorry. Here's our pressure temperature chart, and this chart is basically looking at the evaporator temperatures and the pressures that you can expect to see at those locations. This is a great tool, not used very much, but it is a good indication of what normal should look like if you were trying to find out at different points inside the system what should be where. All right, gauge reading, some air and moisture in the system. So let's look at these gauges with an R134 system and a 270 square inch condenser. So obviously the condenser is going to make a difference, right? We're going to have 20 to 30 on the low side, and we're going to have, this appears to be about 163, 2 to 3, up to about 200. Now with the bigger condenser, you're going to be from 25 to 10, and then on the other side, you're going to be 120 to about 158, somewhere around in there. And that's general indication stuff. And but it's not a bad way to see it. And again, if we get this reading, we're going to compare this to our manufacturer's chart and see if that's correct and see if they come up with the same assumptions. All right, gauge reading, some air or moisture in the system. The symptoms may be not cooling effectively. Moisture indicator shows some high level in the system. And so where's that moisture indicator going to be located? So that's going to be located in our receiver dryer or our accumulator in the sight glass. Now we've talked a little bit about that sight glass going away, not being the same kind of tool that it was back in the day. A little bit hard to read, some room for interpretation there. Low pressure cycling does not respond to the on-off cycle of the thermostatic switch. So as you're looking at that thermostatic switch, making sure that everything coincides and is responding correctly. And then the cause, air or moisture in the system, probably caused by an external leak in the low side of the system. So why do we say the low side? Because when the high side of the system leaks, we have high pressure there. So everything just is kind of an external leak. Now on the low side of the system, oftentimes we can be in a vacuum state. And so when we are in a vacuum state and it's leaking on that side, we can actually bring air in. As refrigerant rather goes out, we can actually bring coolant. I'm going to say that wrong twice. As refrigerant goes out, we can bring air in with an external leak. All right. So the cure is leak test the system, remove the refrigerant, and repair any leaks found. And obviously we're going to vacuum out the system very well because we want that air and that moisture out of the system. So I think they're missing a piece on this slide for that one. All right, gauge reading, some air in the moisture system. So the cure again, flush and purge the lines, top up with oil, replace the receiver dryer, evacuate the system, and charge with the recommended weight of refrigerant. All right, so let's look at the gauge reading for excessive air and moisture in the system. So now we're going to have sort of erratic readings. So we're going to have 0 to 10 or 40 to 50 depending on what's going on. And then our high side pressure is going to have a very serious range. It's going to be going from 200 all the way up to like 250. And then with the larger condenser, you're going to see where you've got 0 to 15 or actually from vacuum 5 inches of vacuum to 15 or 32 to 50 on the pressure side, and then just pretty consistent high pressure on the high side of the gauge there. And again, those readings are indication only, but let's look at the symptoms for this. Symptoms: not cooling effectively. Moisture indicator shows a high level of moisture in the system. Suction pressure is high in the beginning, but as the system operates may drop to low or even vacuum. Discharge pressure is high. And then the cause is either the receiver dryer saturated, allowing moisture to freeze at the TXV, or high pressure causes caused by excessive air in the system. So again, the cure: leak test the system, reclaim the refrigerant, repair any leaks, flush and purge as required, top up the refrigerant oil, replace the receiver dryer, evacuate the system, and charge with recommended weight of refrigerant. All right, gauge reading obstructed condenser or overcharged. So as you're looking at this, obviously we're going to have kind of a high-low side pressure, and you're going to have a high side pressure, ranging, having a pretty big range there. Then on our bigger condenser, okay, you're going to have 30 to 45 on your low side gauge, so you're going to have high low side pressure, and then you're going to have high side pressure as well, same thing. All right, the symptom: not cooling effectively, suction line warm, discharge line too hot, truck engine may be overheating, the high pressure relief opening and circuit to clutch. High pressure relief opening the circuit to the clutch. So this is where our pressure is so high that it's actually going to trip that high side protection switch and shut off the clutch. And then the cause could be a slipping fan belt, clutch fan is faulty, refrigerant is excessively overcharged, things like that. Let's see. Sorry, I kind of got this all messed up. There we go. Gauge reading: low refrigerant charge. So with low refrigerant, we're going to have normal to low side, and we're going to have normal to high, I should say, high side pressures. And same with the larger the condenser, though, however, we're going to end up with low high side pressure and somewhat low lower, I should say, normal to low, or just very low side pressure. So obviously, as you see, the size of the condenser, the size of the system, the volume of the system is going to make a big difference on how they react when they're low. All right, symptoms: not cooling effectively, slightly lower than normal suction and discharge pressure, and the cause is a very small leak in the AC system. So this is a very common symptom that you're going to have, or a very common problem you're going to have. So the cure for this is obviously to leak test the system, repair any leaks found, and then flush and purge the system if required. All right, so low refrigerant, again, the other part of the cure is top off with oil, replace the receiver dryer, evacuate the system, and charge with the recommended weight of refrigerant. All right, very low refrigerant. So this is getting a little, obviously we're getting into this again. So very low refrigerant, we're going to have a very low side. We're going to have possibly a very high side. Again, we're trying to push as much of this refrigerant as we have through the system. And same thing we're going to see on the other side. Same symptoms: not cooling, discharge from the evaporator may be warm, compressor not running or cycling frequently. So kind of like we saw on my Ranger, when it was super low, it just cycled very fast because it's running out of refrigerant on the low side very quickly, and that low side cycling switch is going to cycle. Low pressure switch consistently open. And then, the cause on this is obviously a leak in the air conditioning system. And then the cure: leak test the system, recover the refrigerant and repair any leaks, flush and purge the system if needed, remove the refrigerant from the flush, remove the refrigerant and flush if required, top off oil if required, replace the receiver dryer, evacuate the system, and charge with recommended weight of refrigerant. All right, gauge rating. Again, if we have high restriction, we're going to end up with a low side and a high side. We're going to be trying to push as much of that refrigerant as we can, but it's not going to go through the low side, so it's going to suck this low side into the vacuum. And same thing with the larger condenser. Symptom: not cooling effectively, frosted discharge line beyond the restriction. If the restriction is between the compressor and the inlet of the receiver dryer, the discharge pressure may be excessively high. High pressure switch is open, and then the cause: the restriction between the compressor discharge and the inlet of the TXV. All right, let's look at the cure here. Feel the discharge line for cold spots to identify the point of restriction. Recover the refrigerant and flush if required. Replace defective component if it can't be flushed. Top up with oil if required. Replace the receiver dryer. Evacuate the system and charge with the recommended weight of refrigerant. All right, gauge reading. So let's look at this again. So gauge reading. If the TXV is not opening enough, so it's not opening enough, we're going to see, again, low side pressures because it's sucking against the TXV valve that's not opening. And then you're going to see high side pressure because it's pushing against a restriction. So both of these are pretty normal, and you see a corresponding change with obviously with the system being bigger, we're not going to have as much of a high pressure. All right, gauge reading continued again. TXV not opening enough. Symptoms are not cooling effectively, sweat or frost buildup on the expansion valve, suction or discharge pressure return to normal if heat is applied to the TXV. Okay. So again, we can actually trick the TXV. We can actually go in and do something to warm it up or mess with the TXV to just see if that's the problem. Maybe the superheat setting on the TXV is not good, or the bulb is in the wrong place. The cause: the TXV does not open enough. The TXV is stuck closed. Problem with the capillary tube or sensing bulb, or a blockage in the orifice tube in a clutch cycling orifice tube system. All right, let's look at here. So now the TXV is stuck in the open position. So what we're going to see here is that our low side pressure can't suck against anything. It's just getting high pressure. And then obviously you're going to have high side pressure, which is a little interesting considering you don't have much of a restriction with the TXV held in the open position. This is an interesting reading. You'll have to play with this one to see if that pans out for you in the future. But again, with the bigger condenser, you're seeing the same thing. You're seeing a pretty wide range of high side temperature or pressure, I should say, and then high low side pressure. All right, the symptom: gauge reading, TXV held open again. Not cooling effectively, cools well in the beginning, but evaporator freezes over and blocks airflow. Sweat or frost buildup on the TXV. Suction valve sweats heavily. System pressure returns to normal if the evaporator is allowed to defrost. The cause could be a stuck open flooding evaporator, or the problem with the sensing bulb or capillary tube. The cure: repair the TXV if possible. If not, go on to step 2. Recover the refrigerant and flush if necessary. Replace the TXV. Be careful not to damage or crimp the capillary tube. Top off the oil if necessary. Replace the receiver dryer. Evacuate the system. And charge with the proper weight of refrigerant. All right, gauge reading. Defective thermostatic switch. So now with a thermostatic switch, it's going to allow us to freeze the system. So we're gonna, if it's defective, we're gonna be able to freeze the system. So here we are, with our 0 again. We have low side pressure. We have moderate to high side pressure on the high side, and it's the same low to normal to low, I should say, on the high side for the larger of the condensers there. All right, symptoms: not cooling effectively, compressor runs constantly and may become noisy, evaporator freezes up, blocking airflow, blocking airflow. The causes of a defective thermostatic switch: not disengaging the clutch at temperatures below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Bent or kinked or broken capillary tube causing the thermostatic switch to malfunction. All right, gauge reading defective thermostatic switch. Inspect condition of capillary tube for thermostatic switch. Perform electrical test on the switch. Rectify any kind of problems found with the capillary tube. If the capillary tube can't be corrected, replace the thermostatic switch. All right, gauge reading defective compressor. So defective compressor, now we're going to see very high low side pressure and very low very low high side pressure. And it's the same on both sides. The high side may, it's going to do some compressing, possibly, but certainly not get very high, and it's certainly not going to do very much on the suction side. So, seeing around that same static pressure that you would have, it doesn't change much off of static. That's pretty normal for a defective compressor, I should say. Not cooling effectively for symptoms. Not cooling effectively, noisy compressor operation with no compressor cycling. One of the causes is compressor drive belt loose or worn, compressor clutch not engaging, internal compressor failure, defective trinary or low pressure switch. The cure: inspect, replace, inspect or replace the compressor drive belt. Inspect or replace the engine drive pulley. Inspect or replace the compressor clutch. Test the trinary switch electrically. Replace if necessary. If the compressor is replaced, flush the system. Top off the oil if necessary. Replace the receiver dryer. Evacuate the system, and then charge with the recommended weight of refrigerant. So this is a very common problem with a defective compressor. So there are some things we can do to test this, and we will do that in lab, so be aware of that. All right, flushing and purging. So purging blows out wet air, refrigerant, and loose dirt from the system. Flushing is used to clean extremely contaminated systems. So purging, we can do with the nitrogen. We can pop dry it. We can blow it out with nitrogen. That's a pretty common practice. Flushing, again, is more of a chemical flush with solvent. And then purging we use the dry nitrogen. And again, we have the dry nitrogen down in the shop. And then HCFC 141 is commonly approved by system manufacturers for flushing the system out. And then some manufacturers do not endorse flushing and they are not covered under warranty. AC systems that are constantly under pressure. Always wear your PPE when working on a charged AC system. And then on the R134A, they can be combustible under the right conditions. So be careful that you don't find that stoichiometric blend and it does actually catch on fire. That's why smoking around AC is not a good idea. Using torches around the AC system, also a bad idea. The pressure inside the AC system can spike very rapidly. All right, let's see. AC systems should never be pressure or leak tested with compressed air. A fire or explosion could result. And again, that's because of that. Stoichiometric blend. You're getting closer to stoichiometric at that point. All right, I'm gonna let you guys read through the rest of the summary here. Make sure you guys understand what's going on, and we will have more videos to follow this one. And don't forget, we will be having tests on these videos.